Am I the butthole for confronting my dad about his affair in front of the family? Hey Reddit, I need some advice because I might have blown up my entire family and now I'm unsure if I'm in the wrong. Here's what went down. I 27F have always had a pretty decent relationship with my parents. Growing up, my dad 55M was the typical family man, or so I thought. He's always been present, supportive, and someone I could depend on. But recently, I discovered something that shattered that image. My dad has been having an affair. I found out about the affair by accident a few weeks ago. I was using his laptop to help him with some tech issues, and I saw messages between him and a woman that were clearly not innocent. At first, I was in complete shock. But after digging a little deeper, I know I shouldn't have. It became clear that this has been going on for years. I was furious, but I kept quiet, hoping I could figure out how to approach him without making things worse. Fast forward to last weekend, we were having a big family gathering: my mom, dad, siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins, all together for a birthday celebration. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Every time I looked at my dad, all I could think about was the betrayal, and it was eating me alive. In the middle of dinner, my dad was talking about how important family is and how much he values honesty and trust. I don't know what came over me, but I snapped. I interrupted him and said, "How can you talk about honesty when you've been cheating on mom for years?" The room went silent. My dad's face turned pale, and my mom just stared at me in disbelief. My dad immediately denied it and started yelling that I didn't know what I was talking about. But I wasn't backing down. I told everyone what I had found, showed the proof I had saved on my phone, and confronted him right there, in front of the whole family. My mom broke down crying, my siblings were in shock, and the rest of the family didn't know how to react. It was chaos. My dad stormed out of the house, and my mom followed shortly after. The family gathering was completely ruined. Now, the aftermath is even worse. My mom is devastated, and my siblings are angry with me for ruining the family and not handling it privately. Some of my extended family members think I was out of line for confronting him so publicly, saying I should have pulled him aside instead of blowing up the entire event. But here's the thing: I feel like my dad deserved to be exposed. He's been lying to all of us for years, especially to my mom, and I couldn't stand to let him keep pretending everything was perfect. However, now that I see the hurt and damage I've caused, I'm questioning whether I should have handled it differently. So, Reddit, am I the butthole for confronting my dad about his affair in front of the whole family and ruining the gathering? Am I the butthole for telling my sister she can't use my child's DNA for her IVF? Hey Reddit, I'm in need of some impartial advice because my family situation has become incredibly strained over a request my sister made. Here's the full story. I 35F have a wonderful 5-year-old daughter, Lily, who brings so much joy into my life. My younger sister, Rachel 32F, has been trying to have a baby for several years now but has faced numerous challenges with infertility. Despite various treatments, she hasn't had much success, and now she's considering IVF as her next option. A few weeks ago, Rachel came to me with a request that completely threw me off guard. She asked if she could use Lily's DNA as part of her IVF process. Rachel explained that since Lily is my child, and I'm her sibling, using Lily's DNA could potentially increase her chances of a successful IVF. Essentially, she wants to use Lily's genetic material to help conceive a child that would be genetically related to her and to my daughter. I was stunned. To be honest, I didn't even know this was a thing or that it was something people could request. Rachel argued that it would be a significant help to her, and she framed it as a way for me to support her in her time of need. She said she understood if it was a tough ask but hoped I'd consider it because it could make the difference in her ability to have a child. I took a step back and tried to think about it logically, but I couldn't. My main concerns are about Lily's privacy and the potential emotional and ethical implications. I've read about how using a child's DNA can affect them in the long run, and I worry about how it might impact Lily, both now and in the future. Moreover, I feel that involving Lily's genetic material in such a personal and medical procedure might be crossing boundaries I'm not comfortable with. I tried to explain my concerns to Rachel. I told her that while I understand she's going through a tough time and that I want to support her, I'm not comfortable with the idea of using Lily's DNA in her IVF process. I offered to help in other ways, such as being there for her emotionally or assisting with other aspects of her journey to becoming a mother. But Rachel was heartbroken and felt betrayed. She said that by not agreeing to her request, I was being selfish and unsupportive, especially since Lily's DNA might be the key to her dream of having a child. The fallout has been severe. Rachel is now refusing to speak to me, and my parents are taking her side. They believe I'm being unreasonable and are upset with me for not being more supportive of Rachel's situation. They've also suggested that I should be willing to make this sacrifice for family, given how much Rachel wants to be a mother. I feel like I'm stuck in a difficult position. On one hand, I want to support my sister and acknowledge her struggles, but on the other hand, I feel strongly about protecting my child's privacy and setting boundaries. I'm torn between wanting to be a supportive family member and standing firm on what I believe is right for my daughter. So, Reddit, am I the butthole for telling my sister she can't use my child's DNA for her IVF? Did I make the wrong decision, or am I justified in my discomfort and reluctance?
Am I the butthole for kicking out my roommate after she ruined my relationship? Hey Reddit, I'm in a bit of a mess right now, and I need to know if I overreacted. I 27F have been living with my roommate Kelly 26F for about 2 years. At first, things were great. We were good friends, had similar lifestyles, and living together was easy. We'd hang out, go out for drinks, and everything felt perfect. But recently, things took a massive turn, and now I've kicked her out of the apartment. I don't know if I handled this right, but here's what went down. For some context, I've been in a relationship with my boyfriend Jake 29M for just over a year. Things between us were solid. We were talking about moving in together soon, and I thought I was in a happy, stable relationship. Kelly and Jake met each other through me, and they were always friendly, which I didn't think much about at first. Kelly would comment on how lucky I was to have Jake and would constantly compliment him. I shrugged it off, assuming she was just being nice, but then she started to cross some boundaries. It started subtly. Kelly would always find an excuse to be around when Jake came over. She'd sit in the living room with us during our movie nights, invite herself along when we had date nights, or ask Jake for help with things around the apartment, little things like fixing a shelf or carrying groceries, things she could easily do herself. At first, I thought she was just being friendly, but it started getting weird. One night, Jake and I had a small argument about something trivial, like where we were going to have dinner. Kelly overheard and jumped right into the conversation, siding with Jake and saying things like, "Jake, you deserve someone who appreciates you, and I would never act like that if I had a guy like you." She made it seem like I was the bad guy for a completely normal disagreement. After that, she kept making snide comments about how lucky I was and how she'd handle things so much better if she were in my shoes. Things got even worse when I noticed Jake becoming distant. He was coming over less frequently, and when he did, he seemed uncomfortable around Kelly. She always managed to be in the room when we were together, and her comments were getting more and more inappropriate. She'd laugh too loudly at his jokes, compliment him on his appearance, and even bring up personal things about him that I hadn't even told her. I felt like I was in some weird competition for my own boyfriend's attention. Then, the bombshell dropped. A mutual friend of ours casually mentioned that Kelly had been texting Jake behind my back. I didn't believe it at first. Why would she do that? But when I confronted Jake, he showed me the texts. Kelly had been sending him flirty messages for weeks. She told him that he deserved someone better than me, and that she was into him. She even hinted that they should meet up without me because I was holding him back. Jake didn't respond to most of her advances, but the fact that she was actively trying to sabotage our relationship floored me. I was absolutely furious. I confronted Kelly immediately. I showed her the texts and demanded to know what the hell she was thinking. Her response? She didn't even deny it. She had the audacity to say, "Well, if he was really happy with you, why did he entertain the idea? Maybe I just gave him an option." I lost it. I told her she was out of the apartment. No discussion. She started crying, saying I was overreacting and that I was throwing away our friendship over something that wasn't even serious. But how can I live with someone who would try to steal my boyfriend? She moved out the next week, but not before spreading her side of the story to our mutual friends. Now, some of them are saying I was too harsh. They're acting like it's just a crush and that I should have been more understanding. A few of them even suggested that Jake must have done something to lead her on, otherwise she wouldn't have gone that far. I'm feeling ganged up on now, and I'm questioning if I was too extreme in kicking her out, but at the same time, I feel like what she did was a complete betrayal. How could I trust her after that? Jake and I are still together, but things have been rocky since the whole incident. I'm trying to move on from it, but I can't help but wonder if I made the situation worse by kicking Kelly out. Some people are saying I should have tried to talk it through with her, but I honestly couldn't bear the thought of living with someone who was actively trying to ruin my relationship. So, Reddit, am I the butthole for kicking out my roommate after she tried to steal my boyfriend and ruin my relationship? Should I have handled this differently, or was I right to protect my relationship and my home? Am I the butthole for building a fence around my house to keep my in-laws away? Hey Reddit, I 33M need some serious advice because I think I've just thrown a grenade into my family's dynamic. Here's the full story. I've been married to my wife 31F for 3 years now, and while we've had a great relationship for the most part, there's been one issue that's been gnawing at me ever since. We tied the knot. Her parents, don't get me wrong, they're not bad people. They're actually quite nice, in small doses, but ever since we got married, they've taken it upon themselves to constantly show up at our house without any warning. At first, I tried to be understanding. They're close-knit and overly involved, but they mean well, right? I would grit my teeth and endure their visits, even though they were unannounced and at the most inconvenient times. My wife works long hours, so when they show up, I'm usually the one left entertaining them, which takes up my entire weekend. It's not like they stop by for a quick hello. Either they'll sit around for hours, chatting about everything and nothing, while I'm stuck thinking about all the things I need to get done, or the relaxing weekend I could have had. I talked to my wife about it multiple times, trying to get her to see how much it was bothering me. I told her how much I value our privacy and that I needed a little bit of peace and quiet, but every time I brought it up, she'd shrug and say, "That's just how they are," or "They mean well, don't take it personally." So basically, I was left to deal with it on my own. The tipping point came about a month ago. I had planned to spend the weekend finishing some projects around the house, enjoying some downtime, and just recharging. But then, like clockwork, my in-laws showed up completely unannounced again. I tried to remain polite, but after hours of forced small talk, I snapped inside. I couldn't take it anymore. My home didn't feel like my space. I felt like a guest in my own house. That night, I started looking for ways to take control of my environment again, and that's when I came up with the idea: build a fence. If they can't just walk in, they'll have to respect our space, right? So, without telling my wife, I hired a contractor to build a big, solid, 6-foot-tall fence around our property. It took about a week to finish, and I was pretty pleased with the result. The fence has a lock and gate, and I made sure to keep the key with me at all times. Fast forward to the next weekend when my in-laws, as expected, tried to drop by. I was inside when I heard the sound of them pulling up, followed by the confused knocks on the gate. They were clearly caught off guard and called my wife, demanding to know why there was suddenly a fence around our house and why my wife had no idea what was going on because, well, I hadn't told her about it. When she confronted me, she was furious. She said I had gone way overboard and that building a fence without discussing it with her was completely out of line. I argued that I had brought up the issue countless times, but she never took me seriously. I was sick of feeling like I had no control over our home, so I took matters into my own hands. I thought it was a reasonable solution to a long-standing problem. Well, it didn't end there. My in-laws are now acting like I've declared war on them. They've told the entire extended family that I'm trying to cut them off and have even accused me of being paranoid and petty. My wife, meanwhile, is still upset, saying I should have handled it differently and that I went behind her back. I get that maybe I should have talked to her before taking such drastic action, but I honestly felt like I had no choice. I needed to set boundaries, and nothing else was working. Now though, I'm left wondering if I made the situation worse. My relationship with my in-laws is strained, my wife is angry, and I feel like the bad guy, even though all I wanted was some peace and privacy in my own home. So, Reddit, am I the butthole for building a fence around my house to keep my in-laws away? Should I have handled this differently, or was I justified in finally setting some boundaries?